Hi and welcome to episode 1. Here I am with my cup of tea in one hand and my cup of gazpacho in the other. I drink it out of a glass with a straw. For that I don't apologise. It's a metal straw though, so good for the environment. For those of you watching on video, you'll see I am wearing what's called a flat cap. That's to represent the fact that I'm from the northwest of England. But anyway, here we are. Here's the first episode of a podcast that's been in the making for probably about 6 months. My procrastination and perfectionism has prevented me from getting this out to you guys. And I want to talk today a little bit about perfectionism and the fact that a lot of us, when learning or trying to communicate in our second language, in your case English and in my case Spanish, we can often be blocked by the need to get things exact. I need to get things right. If I'm going to make a mistake in this, I'm just not going to say it at all. In my case, for the fear of kind of looking a little bit stupid almost, I don't know, coming across as not as intelligent as I am perhaps, and therefore that was a block for me. Of course, I can't speak for everybody. I'm just speaking from my own personal experience, and hopefully this will resonate with you in some way. We're going to start today's episode with an extract from an interview I had a few weeks ago with a friend of mine, Ángel. You can watch the full interview by following the link in the show notes. But this particular part of the interview, which I like to call the chicken story, is very interesting to me in that it really comes down to our attitude about making mistakes. So here's the story. The guy that sells chicken, now this is a word I have to be careful with as well, because
hmm
if I get the letter wrong at the end of chicken
hmm
in Spanish, it can mean a very different thing, right? So, so the guy that sells chicken, the pollo seller man, how do you say that in Spanish? He's a, what,
Well, el
what,
pollero.
right, right. So that guy, right, he's taught me loads of vocabulary about like the names of different things that because I asked for chicken wings, so alitas de pollo, and I went sin pata, right? Because I want the sometimes he chops the end of the legs
Yeah,
off stuff, and he goes, no,
yeah.
it's punta, sin punta. On the wings, it's punta, and
Okay.
everything's a pata, and so it
Yeah.
depends what it is. So I've learned a lot of chicken related vocabulary over the years. You know, these guys have really helped me with all that stuff. But I'll tell you a very quick story about getting the chicken letter wrong, right?
Okay.
And this was again about the first month we'd moved to Spain, and I
hmm
went shopping to the canisteria, but it was one of those places where there's a charcuteria part,
hmm
and then canisteria, and then the guy that sells chicken, right? There's like
Okay.
three different counters, yeah.
Services.
So,
Okay.
so your service is in the same shop. So uh, the whole like queuing system used to baffle me as well. You know, ¿quién es el último? You know, ¿quién de la vez? Which I'll put a link to the show notes about me doing that on stage when I was doing stand-up comedy in Madrid. But I remember, but so I said, my wife said, right, so you go in to the place and you've got to
hmm
say like really loudly so everyone gets, you've got to get the attention of everyone. ¿Quién es el último? Right?
hmm
And I was like, what does that mean? She's like, well, who's last in the queue? And I'm like, why do you have to do that? You just stand in a queue. No, this is not just a queue. And she's like, no, no, not in Spain. We don't queue. Really, like we just go in, find out who went in last before you, then you sort of like make an eye contact relationship with them, and then you sort of like, oh, all right. So I've got to speak to everyone. Like my Spanish is terrible. Don't worry, that's what you have to say. And then someone else will come in and ask quién es el último, and then you like say, right, it's me, you know. So anyway, that was all right. And she said, but in this place, you have to be specific about what you're buying because there'll be different last queues of people in different for different products, right? It was so complicated, Angel. It was so complicated, right?
I
Anyway,
imagine. I
I
imagine.
just went like, and by the way, this is me with like cero patatero español as well, so it was even more difficult, right? So anyway, I went in and that day all we wanted was some chicken, some pechuga de pollo. All we wanted was chicken. So I went in and I was like, it was packed as well. It was like 30 people in there. I just went, eh, ¿Quién es el último para la polla? Right? Just like as loud as I could, you know? And like all these people are looking at me, some of them sniggering, like laughing at me and that, and then some of them not. And then I swear to you, this is true. This little abuela with a little, this little abuela with a little handbag just went, yo, like that, right? So I tell that, like, I get it now, but man, that was really. So you can't be
Wow.
saying the last letter of chicken, by the way. If anyone's listening to this that doesn't know any Spanish, you've got to say pollo. Don't be getting that letter wrong. It means something else. Look it up
Yeah.
online if you don't know what it means. What's clearly interesting about that story is that making mistakes can often lead to funny moments, and that's okay. But the problem is, when I look back at that particular story, I can remember I didn't know at the time why I was being laughed at, right? And so that impacted me quite severely, really, as to this perfectionism and need to get everything perfect, or I wouldn't say it at all. And for years, I hid behind that kind of fear of making mistakes, the shame, really, of, in my mind anyway, kind of looking stupid, and people just having this attitude towards me that, who's this guy? I can't understand a word he says, you know? And it's not until actually very, very recently that I've managed to cambiar el chip, like change something in my mind with regards to this, which has basically been the reason I've started this campaign, this idea. I've studied neurolinguistic programming in order to be a coach and to have techniques in order to be able to help people discover why they have these elements of self-doubt and self-criticism, and help people overcome these barriers. Because I've lived through it myself, the perfectionist in me still exists, but I have now a better ability to overcome it, right? I'm now speaking Spanish like children do, in terms of I don't really care about the mistakes I make. Of course, accuracy is important. There's an episode all about fluency and accuracy and what those two things are. There's an interview with Alberto, the pilot, who we discuss accuracy in terms of when you're speaking to air traffic control. Of course, 100% accuracy is needed, otherwise people may die. Or versus that same pilot in that same aeroplane speaking to the passengers, explaining when the plane's going to land, what the weather's like when we do land, how long it's going to take, small mistakes in terms of, prepositions, word order. In those situations, as long as your message is understood, then they don't really matter, right? And basically, I'm speaking to people who have a really good level of English already, but sadly think they don't, right? Which is basically, I guess, the state that I'm in with my Spanish. I've been in Spain now for 9 years, studying the language for 3 years before that. And literally, it's only in the last kind of 8 months that I've moved forward to this place of, listen, yo puedo, mi acento is part of like who I am. I'm going to just do my best to sobrevivir, to apañarme, to get by. I can do this. And the thing that I see here in Spain, where I live, every day, is that I meet people all the time that don't want to speak to me in English. So I'm maybe in a situation where I'm really trying my best to find the words, and then suddenly they'll just help me and start speaking English. And I say, oh, great, that's amazing. Thanks so much for helping me. You speak English really well. And they always say, no, I don't. No, my English isn't very good at all. However, they're able to communicate with me, and I'm understanding them and they can understand me. And this self-critical lens in which people here view their ability to communicate in English has been an interesting topic for me to investigate. So throughout this podcast series, you will hear interviews with Spanish people that are learning English, that use it a lot, use it all the time at work and in their social lives perhaps, but still think that they're not very good at English. So this series really is aimed at helping you realize your full potential with your English communication skills. And of course, life is a process of constant improvement. We want to improve. That's human nature. We often compare ourselves to others and use that as a benchmark in order to improve and become better. And that's okay to a point, to strive in terms of achievement. But what I've noticed right now is there's this, what I think is a kind of toxic message almost of become fluent in 6 months and, speak like a native. Like if the aim, Ángel said this recently on the interview, he said, Spanish people, even famous people, when they speak English, they speak with not a good accent. And I said, what do you mean by a good accent? What does that mean to you?
Sometimes you hear people that are speaking English, but with Spanish accent, but they speak very well. For example, this is very typical from famous people. You speak, you hear, for example, I don't know, Rafa Nadal or Fernando Alonso, or they are speaking English, but not with the perfect accent. But they are speaking.
That's what's interesting to me, though. Perfect accent, good accent. This is why I'm asking you this. Is this how the self-perception of the way you're communicating? I mean, is the aim to speak exactly like I'm speaking English now? Is that what you think is a perfect accent? Because this is the whole thing I've gone through. I'm less so now after this many years here and recently, really focusing on my acceptance really of the way I speak Spanish, because I have an accent, and the common phrase here is un acento de guiri, no, de guiri. So right is that I totally accept, and I'm fine with, and in fact sometimes I think it's quite exotic that I have this guiri accent, because in the town where I live, it's not like I live in a big city, so there's not many Brits in the village, and so I'm happy with it, that like Michael Robinson, God rest his soul, sort of was a great example of someone that could speak awesome Spanish, with an accent, not ashamed of it, not hiding the fact that he's not from it. Because at the end of the day, we're not from this country, right? So we're learning a language that isn't our own. And for me, your accent's part of what makes you you. It's part of your identity, So like, be proud of it. Be proud of
No problem.
your accent. And English spoken with a Spanish accent, like it's super sexy, man. It's super cool.
I'd like to invite you both to spend the weekend. We'll eat well, we'll drink good wine, we'll make love.
Who exactly is going to make love?
Hopefully the three of us.
Like, so when you say a good accent, like if you, again, mi pueblo, if you went with me on a night out where I'm from, you're like, this guy, like. Also, you've got great hair as well, which happens in Spain. We lose our hair super fast. You guys have all got this, like, I don't know, Arab DNA, like awesome hair going on, great olive skin, sexy voice, man. It's like, get involved, embrace it.
Okay, I have to go there. I have to go there.
Reframe it. Yeah, go. Yeah, go.
I have to be very successful.
Go to the north of England, mate. Immediately, you're the king.
Yeah, the king of England.
You gotta relocate sometimes,